the most shocking moments on paternity court.
Going from place to place and home to home, he doesn't know who his father is because his mother doesn't know who his father is.
That's a lie. You've never used a condom. Now,
Understand that there are hopes, there are dreams, and then there is DNA.
This isn't the first time Miss Yarborough has come to paternity court. She proved that Creedle Jones was her biological father, while Michael was her real brother. But now, they're in for a shocker. To prove that Mr. Triplett is trying to steal their father's estate by pretending to be the son.
You've always known that Mr. Creedle Jones is your father, and you hope that once the DNA results are revealed, Miss Yarborough and Mr. Jones will welcome you with open arms.
Yes, Your Honor.
He claims that he's like 2 weeks older than me. As far as my life, I know my mother and father was always together from 1964 to 1974.
The first thing Judge Lauren does is ask them all to show their birth certificates. Both Michael and Miss Yarborough have Creedle Jones stated as father, but when it's time for Mr. Triplett to show his guess what, it says blank where the father's name should be. How will Mr. Triplett defend himself?
For 50 years.
50 years?
50 years. I
You
was
say
thinking
your
I was
father
older.
signed your birth certificate?
Yes.
Do you have evidence of that?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
So, Mr. Triplett, is Mr. Jones on your birth certificate?
No, he isn't.
He is not.
No. I've always been told that Creedle was the only father that I've ever had.
When Mr. Triplett speaks about the 2 times he met Creedle, Judge Lauren asks him if he ever had a father-son conversation with him. When he says no, the entire audience starts murmuring. The judge starts asking Miss Yarborough some questions.
So, Miss Yarborough, you once stood in this very same position as Mr. Triplett.
He pulled up in a car and he kind of pat me on the head, handed me $100 and went up to talk with my mom, and I left.
Did you ever hear that in addition to yourself, there were other children?
Miss Yarborough says it's unbelievable that Mr. Triplett is doing all of this for the money. When she fought her case, it was because she wanted to reclaim her memories with her late father. She never wanted any royalties or his musical estate. Can Mr. Triplett find a solid excuse to refute her claims?
So that I can find out if he's my father. It's not about money. I don't need the money, not at all. I just want to know if he's my father.
To me, we all look like our dad. But, you know, to me, there's no resemblance there.
And so
And
after
yes, he
witnessing their appearance in this courtroom previously,
Judge Lauren agrees that seeing how famous Creedle was, some people might take advantage of that situation. For rebuttal, Michael brought evidence showing how his father divided all his property among his children, and nowhere does it mention Mr. Triplett. As a result, the judge calls in an expert.
a fight over royalties, and that fight would often include siblings, offspring that may not have been recognized earlier.
So now we are finding there are more family members than initially reported at the time.
The most shocking discovery is when Judge Lauren reveals how it's been reported that Creedle fathered more than 30 children. So, it's completely possible that Mr. Triplett is his child. Eventually, they bring in the other brother, Irving Jones, to see what he's got to say about this dilemma.
Mr. Jones, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We are here, of course, discussing the paternity as it relates to Mr. Triplett.
I didn't tell Michael, I didn't tell my mom, I didn't tell nobody. I wanted to go find him, you know?
After hearing Irving's story, Michael remains stubborn that there's no way Mr. Triplett is their sibling, and he's basing it on the fact that there's no family resemblance between them. At least, Miss Yarborough feels a little sympathetic, but the only way to solve all the confusion is to finally open up the results.
Mr. Triplett, Ms. Yarborough, Mr. Irving Jones, and Mr. Michael Jones, you are related.
Oh,
You've been used to being the big brother all these years?
Yeah.
Now you got one.
yeah.
I love that.
What could be more shocking for a man than knowing a woman lied to him? Mr. Hudson was fooled into thinking that Miss Bridges' son was his son. After some snooping around and confessing, Mr. Hudson has learned a terrible truth.
So you say she dropped a bomb on you.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me about that. When did that happen?
Well, Your Honor, I was led to believe that I was Ja'Cory's father because at the time that we were living together, it's the time that she became pregnant with the child. We were together for approximately about 5 years, Your Honor.
Mr. Hudson confesses he was tricked into babying Miss Bridges' son. The first fight happened on their son's first birthday. Miss Bridges was astonished to discover Mr. Hudson had invited his ex-girlfriend to the party, but not her. To get revenge, she told him something unbelievable.
I am the father. I'm supposed to be the father. I'm here.
Because I was not gonna show because you had your ex-girlfriend there and I did not feel comfortable there being with her. So I had my own birthday party for him.
You threw a birthday party.
Yes, Your Honor.
You say Ms. Bridges didn't even come.
Yes, Your Honor.
The entire audience is left speechless as these adults try to argue over how their cheating on each other was justified. But the worst part is, after dropping the shocking news that she slept with Mr. Davis, Miss Bridges admits that she stopped her boy from spending time with Mr. Hudson.
So I went on by myself and went and just did what I had to do.
You cheated with Mr. Davis, am I correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
So he's also in the courtroom.
No, Your
Not
Honor.
at this moment.
You're not.
I was.
And what changed that?
Now, Miss Bridges claims that the boy definitely is Mr. Hudson's. She says that it's the only possible window of conception, and even though she cheated on Mr. Hudson, it was after the pregnancy, and she only did that to make him jealous.
I signed the birth certificate because I was under the influence that he was mine.
Because I just know, just look at my baby, and he been there for us, so it's like, hey, it's...
I've been there, correct. I took care of her.
The only way to clear this up is to ask Mr. Davis questions too. When Judge Lauren asks him if he thinks he could be Jacori's father, he says yes. That floors the entire audience. And now, everyone's wondering what makes Mr. Davis believe he's the father.
Me and Miss Bridges met, we hung out for a couple of months. We ended up having unprotected sex around about 3 times. I didn't know that she was pregnant. And I'm like, why'd you ask me that? She's like, no reason. So, like a month later, right.
No reason.
And I'm like, why'd you really ask me that? Does it have something to do with your son?
You won't believe that all this time, Miss Bridges has been leading on 2 men. Mr. Davis didn't want Jacori to grow up not knowing his father's identity, but Miss Bridges raised the poor boy without any male figure in his life. Her aunt is asked to court to answer some questions.
There's been games going back and forth of who's the father, who is not the father. Mr. Davis has stepped up. He's constantly calling me.
She was honest with you and told you that it could be 2 different men?
That is correct. That is correct, Your Honor.
Well, even her aunt thinks this woman needs help. It's been 5 years and poor Jacori has no idea who his father could be. The way Miss Bridges has roped 2 men into this fiasco is just messy. Will the DNA results provide these gentlemen some relief?
In the case of Hudson versus Bridges, when it comes to 3-year-old Jacori Hudson are not his father.
Buckle up for one of the most shocking cases ever. When Miss Sanders realized she got the wrong man to sign her son Caleb's birth certificate, she knew she had to repair her mistakes. Now, she's accusing Mr. Brady of fathering her son. What does Mr. Brady himself say?
The baby?
I came through the neighborhood one day, and he asked me if he could see my baby.
Why would I take care of a baby that's not mine? Why would I visit a baby that's not mine?
Look how pretty my baby is. How can you deny a pretty baby?
At first, the 2 of them start arguing over the colors of Caleb's eyes. Mr. Brady says no one in his family has green eyes, so it's impossible that the boy is his son. But the thing that makes Mr. Brady extremely reluctant is how Miss Sanders never told him about the boy. Instead, he found out through Facebook.
Caleb don't need you in his life.
So you're saying she didn't even inform you that she was pregnant?
Catherine's just a handful.
He was playing me from the left because I didn't want to be with him no more. So he got mad because I got back with my ex. He said he don't want me, but he constantly texts my phone, somebody, so what's up?
Turns out that Mr. Brady doesn't have an issue being the father. His actual issue is with how Miss Sanders had multiple men visiting her house and how he's the only one shocked about being the possible father. The question is, were they ever in a serious relationship or were they only fooling with each other?
Have you asked Mr. Brady for any help? Did you say to him, sir?
It don't make no sense.
You ain't nothing but my potential baby mama.
Eventually, Miss Sanders reveals that the pregnancy wasn't an easy feat for her. The baby had some cyst in his brain, and the doctors thought it could be Down syndrome. Mr. Brady says he supported Miss Sanders in this tough time, but she shocks the entire audience when she says he's lying.
I'm so glad everything turned out fine. Mr. Brady, I gotta ask you, she's going through a lot here. Why weren't you there?
Your Honor, when I tried to take care of him,
When I was pregnant, he never even cared. Only thing he cared about was some shoes. When I first told him that I was pregnant.
The thing that really surprised Mr. Brady was how another man signed the birth certificate. That's more than enough proof that Miss Sanders is just sucking him into this mess so she can trap him in some paternity cycle. But when her ex signed the certificate, what happened?
So after me and him stopped talking, I got back with my ex. And my ex, he was real understanding. He was just saying, So yes, he did sign the birth certificate, but we got DNA tests to find out that he was not the father anyway.
She was gonna deliver.
Miss Sanders used the excuse that she didn't want her child's birth certificate to be blank, even if that meant the man signing the certificate wasn't Caleb's biological father. After this, Mr. Brady uncovers another shocking fact. It's about another man Miss Sanders had been sleeping with.
Conception, so you believe she was also sleeping with your co-worker when she was sleeping with you?
Yes, ma'am, I do. You called.
I called somebody. Which one was it?
We
Call
both
or
know I
text?
don't get mad about it. I don't get mad.
So you gonna get
nonchalant.
mad?
She just said it herself, Your Honor.
He got, so you saying that you not mad about me texting somebody or
Your
calling
Honor,
somebody,
I'm
but
nonchalant.
Okay.
But then Miss Sanders' mother comes into court to support her daughter. She's had enough of Mr. Brady avoiding responsibility of this child, but Mr. Brady won't step up until he knows for certain that Caleb shares his blood.
Pertaining to 6-month-old Caleb Robinson. Mr. Brady, you are not.
I told her that wasn't my baby, Your Honor.
Sit down.
I knew it wasn't mine. 100% positive.
Miss Sanders, he said he was positive.
So who the
I don't
other
understand.
possibilities?
I really don't understand.
Mr. White and Miss Loving are in for one of the most shocking times of their life. While Miss Loving is convinced that Mr. White is her daughter's father, Mr. White has strong evidence that this woman is just scheming against him for no reason.
There was no relationship.
Okay, so
Mr. White,
That's not a
you're
relationship.
doing all that, but she's not your girlfriend.
No protection,
Unprotected, that's
but not your girlfriend.
Correct.
Once Mr. White found out about the pregnancy, he asked Miss Loving if he was the only possibility. Even though she promised him it couldn't be anyone else, Mr. White still doubted her. So what's his reasoning for not believing her?
The entire pregnancy, Ms. Loving, you told Mr. White that he was the only possible
not
father.
throughout the whole pregnancy.
You didn't. When did you tell him otherwise?
I told him on Facebook in August that it was a 50-50 chance.
But Miss Loving was really shocked when Mr. White came to the hospital when she was giving birth and he brought a pregnancy test with him. Miss Loving found it offensive, but Mr. White claims all he wanted to know was if the baby really was his. After all, would any man take care of a baby that doesn't belong to him?
Looking at the baby trying to see what's going on.
And when you looked at the baby, did you feel like it was your child?
No, ma'am. She said,
No,
no, bro. She
I
said
said
no.
no.
She said no. I said, why not? She said, cuz them tests don't work or whatever.
Oh my God.
That day, Mr. White left the hospital not knowing if Loyal was his daughter for sure. On top of that, Miss Loving never openly shared the identity of the other possible father. Adding more to the shock, the conception dates were all messed up too. So her mother's going to come to her defense now.
He used to get on my daughter, you know, about the way she talked to me, and I just looked at him like he's a wonderful man.
During your first appointment?
Yes. I went to a recovery center when I found out I was first pregnant because I decided that I didn't want to have my baby. So basically this is the center that basically helps you cope with the situation, but instead they gave me a conception date.
But the most unbelievable thing that happened is how one clinic gave Miss Loving a conception date that matched with Mr. White. When she went to get checked by her regular gynecologist, they gave her a completely different date. So with two men in the mix, how did Miss Loving handle the situation?
Date. So that puts me in the middle with two guys.
They then did the calculation and gave you a new conception date.
Yes, Your Honor.
And that conception date clearly pointed to a certain man?
Yes.
Which one?
Mr. Talbert.
7:43 to 8:12. It's pretty hard for the audience to keep up with all these dates. With Miss Loving's story out of the way, Mr. White asks to have his mother brought in. She'll clear up why Mr. White is so reluctant to embrace Loyal as his daughter.
One, Your Honor, my family has 6 fingers. My grandmother have it, he had it, my other son had it, and my other son's son have it. I mean, why refuse the test? If I know you my baby daddy, you better swab it, baby.
I didn't
swab it.
I didn't
If I have
refuse
a
the
problem,
test.
if I have a problem,
With the mothers arguing with each other, it's become clear the only way to settle this matter is to open up the results. Judge Lauren is confused by the mess created, but at least both Mr. White and Miss Loving want it resolved. Will the results help them?
When it comes to 5-month-old Loyal Loving, Talbert.
Miss Moyette has a revelation that's going to shock everyone in the courtroom. She strongly suspects that a guy 20 years older than her, called Mr. Lester, is the father of her baby girl Nyla. And now, she's suing him for not taking care of the baby. What does Mr. Lester think?
For half of child rearing expenses,
Yes, Your Honor.
what has been Mr. Lester's involvement in baby Nyla's life since her birth?
Well, Your Honor, Mr. Lester has hardly been involved in Nyla's life. Other than that, me and my mother have been providing for her food, milk, and everything and things like that. I also have evidence here showing you.
Judge Lauren is shocked to learn that of the $1,000 Miss Moyette spent on taking care of Nyla, Mr. Lester contributed nothing. Sure, he might have doubts about the baby's paternity, but that's no way to treat a little girl. Was he even happy about the pregnancy?
In just a moment. When you told him about the pregnancy, what was his reaction, Ms. Moyette?
He was not happy. I went to my 6
We don't
week.
even have
Yeah, can I speak, Mr. Lester? I went to my 6-week prenatal prenatal appointment and asked him, yes, they're gonna ask me, do I want birth control? Should I get on it? He told me no, because I'm gonna want another one soon.
The audience is in complete disbelief when it learns that Mr. Lester has been pushing Miss Moyette to skip her birth control because he wants more babies with her. How does Mr. Lester respond to that? He starts by saying she's lying and that they haven't ever had sex.
Yeah, I know. We've had sex since I've had my daughter 5 times. I've counted.
That's not true.
Well, she's only 3 months old.
Exactly.
So, Mr. Lester, you're saying that this is all in her mind?
Yes, Your Honor. It is definitely in her mind.
We've had sex, and I don't know why you're lying. Like we did. We just had sex yesterday.
But the biggest surprise comes when Miss Moyette yells, they just had sex yesterday, and Mr. Lester is forced to admit she's telling the truth. Judge Lauren is extremely disappointed to learn they still didn't use protection. What this means is Mr. Lester is the possible father. So why does he keep insisting he's not?
Oh, wait. So you said, I want to have a baby, and he said, I don't want to have a baby, and then you went on ahead and had a baby.
Correct.
Well, she told the truth.
Yes, she did.
Mr. Lester,
Yes, Your Honor.
you weren't interested in having a child.
No, I wasn't, Your Honor.
So, who's really at fault in this case? Miss Moyette confesses that when Mr. Lester told her it was going to be just a sexual relationship, she agreed. But then, he told her loved her, and all her daddy issues came out. They started spending more time together, and she thought they would be together forever.
Your Honor, that is so not true. We were not together every day. I wasn't mentally ready for a committed relationship.
You 45 years old.
Absolutely.
So when a woman says to you, I want to have your baby, and you say, no, I really don't want you to, and you're still having sex without protecting yourself, you're setting yourself up.
I've only had sex.
The entire audience goes into a huge shock when Miss Moyette yells how Mr. Lester never uses a condom with her, but he's always careful to use one when he's with other women. But Mr. Lester says Miss Moyette is a two-timer, so the judge feels confused about who to believe. Well, only the results can clear things up.
Mr. Lester, you are Nyla's father.
Yes! Yes!
Ma'am.
Miss
Ma'am.
Moyette.
Didn't I tell you?
Ma'am.